Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
The following is a News Channel 8 special presentation.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Ande Engleman. Next to the governor, the Attorney General's office is one of the most important in the state of Nevada. It's our highest-ranking law enforcement officer. John Hunt and Brian Sandoval are running to replace Frankie Sue Del Papa. Today we go behind the campaign ads and rhetoric. We meet the men and learn the truth. And I'm pleased to say that joining me is Ed Pearce, esteemed journalist from News Channel 8. Following the interview, we have our pundit panel with Greg Ferraro, Chris Wicker, and Dick Gammick. It's all straight ahead here on Nevada Newsmakers.
There's a special magic in friendship, and it all comes alive on stage in the new family hit, Let's Be Friends, starring Jim Henson's Sesame Street Muppets.
Friends, friends everywhere, for us to meet.
Sesame Street Live presents Let's Be Friends, the only show created for this special time in your young child's life. Don't miss it.
Let's be friends.
Don't miss the fun this weekend at the Lawler Event Center. Great seats are available at the box office and all ticket.com locations. See you there.
For the latest in medical breakthroughs and health facts, News Channel 8 gives you the details you'll need for a better quality of life.
Medical news from Northern Nevada's #1 news source. Medical Minutes with Terry Russell. Weeknights at 5 on News Channel 8. Sponsored by Washoe Medical Center.
Hi, I'm Kurt Franke. If you need an attorney, there are 4 things you should look for. 1, a sincere commitment to you and your case. 2, a knowledge of the law. 3, the confidence and work ethic it takes to try a case. And if you find those 3 things in one attorney, then the 4th thing you need is his phone number.
Coming up tomorrow on News Channel 8 Daybreak, we'll get a taste of this weekend's Italian festival.
And David Sweet from Barnes & Noble will be here with some fast reads about snails and Matchbox cars.
That's all tomorrow at 5:30.
I'll remember my special day forever.
My father got his Purple Heart in 1942.
The certified craftsman at Fast Frame can help preserve your personal memories. We offer hundreds of mats and thousands of frame styles to choose from. And Fast Frame is the only shop with a 100% guarantee.
I didn't think I'd make it, but here's the proof.
Fast Frame, highest quality, fastest service, 940 Moana Lane, Reno.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad and political analyst Ande Engleman.
Welcome back. This morning we're talking to Attorney General candidates Brian Sandoval and John Hunt. And I'm pleased that we have Ed Pearce joining us also. We've been talking about these ads, so now let's go take a look at the political ads that both campaigns have been running, what some might call negative ads.
Brian Sandoval brags about his experience, but maybe he's not telling us the whole story. Sandoval neglects to tell us about how he pushed for hundreds of millions of dollars in rate hikes for Nevada Power. Now, his corporate pals at Nevada Power have given him thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. Sandoval now says he's proud of these contributions. I wonder whose side he's really on.
Meet John Hunt, candidate for Attorney General. Federal court documents show in 1995, John Hunt defended a fraudulent telemarketer who used a phony children's charity to scam senior citizens out of $360,000. And now Hunt has accepted nearly $160,000 linked to a faulty mortgage broker whose company was seized by state regulators. Telemarketers, fraud, questionable contributions. Meet John Hunt.
Okay, and that's the view that the general public, the casual viewer at this point, has of this campaign, and it seems to be mostly about campaign contributions. My question is, if you guys have both made this an issue in your campaigns, what kind of reforms of those campaign contribution laws would you be willing to support and champion?
Well, yeah, always thought that one of the things about campaign finance reforms is that people talk about money, right? How much money has someone got into the race? And I really believe that what's really important is for people to actually participate in the process. You know, Brian and I both have raised what I consider to be some pretty obscene amounts of money for a race that people really, if they went out and met both of us, could make a better informed decision. You know, because they talk about caps and things of that nature, but if we had a system that really required people to go and meet the candidates, so maybe there could be something that says, you know, the airwaves, you can't use the airwaves to spend your money. And the only way you could do it was to say, all right, we're going to have use that money to have the voters come to the forums to meet the candidates and things of that nature. And you know, that's kind of.
Wouldn't there be a problem with the First Amendment and freedom of speech?
Well,
with,
you know, and that's you know, the interesting thing about that is that with any kind of campaign reform, there's going to be First Amendment conflicts. It's age old. It's in the process. But I guess for me, the most important part is that I would hope that people looking at the sound bites, whether they're Brian's or whether they're mine, is to really try to get to know the candidates, know who they really are, look them in the eye, try to get what they have in substance. And I think that's what's really important.
Brian?
And to be responsive to the question, I think the laws, we have good laws on the books right now, and it's a matter of enforcing them. I have no problem with the current system in terms of perhaps there could be even more disclosure. I think, I've said this before, I think open government is good government, and if there's a way to allow for more disclosure, who's making the contributions, where the contributions have come from, then I'd be very supportive of that.
I have a question about the contributions, which never really bothered me. Everybody always took contributions and treated everybody the same. And then all of a sudden people started returning contributions. And that sent a message to me that said, you're obligated to those whose contributions you're keeping. If contributions aren't a problem, then why are you blaming each other for the contributions that you're taking?
I'm not sure. I want to make sure I understand the question. I mean, there are some that I have returned because the entity that offered the contribution was currently under investigation by the Attorney General's office. And given that they are currently under investigation by the Attorney General's office, I didn't think it'd be appropriate, or another state agency, to hold on to that contributions. That's why I returned it. But
okay,
I mean, in terms of
what's your obligation to those whose contributions you accept?
good government, providing good government. I have no obligation to anyone else.
John?
I think that what the obligation is that some people, they want to be involved in the process. And, you know, we don't want to discourage those people. And unfortunately, part of the process is to having, you know, the financial wherewithal to get your message out. So I think that if it comes to light that someone who is unsavory or maybe has a conflict, then you have to give those contributions back. But I think that for most people, you know, they're doing it from their heart. You know, there's three reasons why people.
Okay, but
yeah, I mean, campaign contributors, you know, if you listen to you guys, they sound like they're all altruistic and only interested in good government. In fact, at the very least, they want to make sure that their phone calls are going to be answered and that they have your ear at least for a listen, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair
willing
assessment. I think that people who are going to invest in your campaign, I'm sure as time passes, and if you're fortuitous to be elected, then they want to know that when they pick up the phone, that you're going to at least have they'll have access to you. Doesn't mean that you're going to agree with them, because I think that anybody who's done that for either my campaign or Brian's, I think they're going to be sorely disappointed.
Okay, we have to take a break right now. When we come back, I'm going to ask them both about open meeting laws and open government. Right now, we're going to take a break.
Over the past 20 years, I've seen a lot of changes in education.
I hope that I've had a positive effect on the students who have sat in my classroom.
I've taught them English and math. I've taught them science.
But if there's one legacy I hope I've left with them,
It's the value of a quality education.
In my experience, the Nevada State Education Association
has consistently stood up for quality education
for our kids and their future.
Any questions?
When experience counts and integrity matters, Patterson and Kalicki, attorneys at law. Dedicated to solving your legal problems. 322-7200.
Christmas is so dirt cheap at Sparks Vac & Sew. Eureka Car Vacuum, $29.95. Dirt Devil Vacuum, $59.95. Mop Dusters, $9.95. Necky Sewing Machine, $169.95. And plenty more specials at Sparks Vac & Sew, home of the one-day repair.
I can't sleep, Mom. There are monsters in my closet.
I have an idea. There, honey. Feel safe?
Now the monsters are under the caravan.
No, they aren't. I'll show you.
Dodge Caravan. A feeling of security no matter what lies ahead.
Told you so.
Sure. Let's hide under the minivan. Great idea.
See Monsters, Inc. now on DVD and in the Dodge Caravan. Get $2,000 cash allowance and a no-charge DVD player on Caravan ES. Plus Dodge's 770 powertrain limited warranty.
Come on. Yeah, I'm still in the car. 10 minutes, an hour, I've got no idea. This is ridiculous.
Can't wait to get your new Jetta? With offers like this, why would you?
Welcome back. We're here with Brian Sandoval and John Hunt, who are running for Attorney General, and Ed Pearce is joining me. I want to ask you both. Frankie Sue right now has one half of a deputy AG devoted to enforcing Nevada's open meeting law. I want to know how you plan on enforcing that law if you're elected Attorney General. Brian, I'll start with you.
Sure. And one of the ideas I have within the office is to form a public integrity unit, and I see it accomplishing two things. First, to be very proactive in terms of traveling across the state and advising and educating elected officials and appointed government officials as to the open meeting law. I think a lot of the violations have been inadvertent because of ignorance of the open meeting law. And I think if the Attorney General's office was proactive, then a lot of those violations wouldn't occur. But in terms of enforcing the open meeting law, I think the office should be very aggressive. And I wasn't aware that it was only a half-time deputy. Certainly, if I'm going to have this unit, there will be at least a full-time deputy in that regard, enforcing and regulating the open meeting law.
Okay, John?
Well, one of the things that's is of particular interest to me is because I have been the attorney for the dental board, and I advise them on the open meeting law every time they have a meeting. And one of the things about the way the Attorney General's office works, although there may be only someone half-time on that particular issue, there's an Attorney General assigned to every single board. So what I would do is to be myself, knowing how important it is to have any Attorney General that's assigned to a given board to have specific education on how to educate the board so that they comply with the open meeting law. The other thing that I think is really important in order to show the integrity of the open meeting law is that people have to be prosecuted. It's time to start prosecuting people to the fullest extent of the law, and I plan on doing that. So it's twofold. Educate those AGs assigned to the given boards, as well as prosecute those people who would violate it.
John, I need to ask you a question. You advised the dental board for a long time, since 1990, and I used to run the Nevada Press Association and was at the legislature. And session after session, the dental board came and asked for an exemption from the open meeting law.
Well, I don't believe that's true.
Yes, no.
Well, let me finish.
It's true. Bob Kroll was the lobbyist.
But I can tell you that as far as the open meeting law and my being the attorney for the open meeting law for the dental board, that has been strictly enforced while I've been the attorney for the dental board, and I believe that it's really important that it be strictly enforced not just for the dental board, but also for the other boards, because you got to remember this. As the attorney for the dental board, my job is to protect the citizens of the state of Nevada, not the board. And
Okay.
I had them do strict compliance with that law.
All right.
What other changes would the two of you see to make in the Attorney General's office and the way it runs, Brian?
Two other additional ideas that I've talked about is having an elder protection unit, a specific unit within the office dedicated to protecting seniors, and again, going out in the community and being proactive and advising seniors of the protection programs that are available to it. Have a direct hotline into the Attorney General's office so that if there's a report of consumer fraud or physical abuse, the Attorney General's office would investigate and prosecute that. Similarly, I'd like to see a child and family protection unit within the office, and again, to have a way for teachers or children parents to call in if they're concerned about school violence. They can call in. Nevada is one of the few states in the country that doesn't have a website with regard to sex offenders. In other states, you type in your zip code, you can find out where a sex offender is located. I think that's very important for the protection of families in the state of Nevada.
Well, one of the things that I believe is that although Brian suggested these number of things, these are critical times for our states financially. So I don't know where that money is going to come from to create another bureaucracy inside of a bureaucracy already that I don't think it could be more efficient. My thing is that as the Attorney General, once you get in there, as my dad used to say, you listen a lot, and once you listen to the people that are actually there, because a lot of people from the outside can come in and say, oh, we're going to make all these changes. They neither have the budget nor the ability to make those changes effective. The way you do it is you assess the situation and you try to motivate those people to get the maximum efficiency out of the Attorney General's office, and that's what I plan on doing.
I'd like to hear something from each of you, a commitment of some sort as to the consumer advocate, or what's now called the BCP. Brian, I know that you represented the shareholders.
Yes.
And the shareholders is, by the way, totally funded by Sierra Pacific and Nevada Power. I found the papers on file at the Consumer Advocate's office. And I know that from the ads, there's been some question as to whether or not you would support the Consumer Advocate. Can you tell us who you would appoint as Consumer Advocate if you're elected?
Well, first, the current Consumer Advocate still has 2 years on his term. It's a nonpartisan appointment. Tim Hay, I've worked with him for several years. I think he does a fabulous job. I've had several conversations with him. I think he does a good job as the consumer advocate, and I hope that he stays. It's certainly going to be with my encouragement. But the consumer advocate plays a very important role in this state, and I think Tim has done a good job and hope he'll continue to do so.
Okay, John, what about you?
Well, you know, this is one of the big differences between Brian and I. I truly believe that the consumer advocate has done a tremendous job for the citizens in Nevada on power rate decreases so that we don't foist it out on working men and women and seniors.
Yeah, but who would you appoint as consumer advocate?
Tim Hay and I have worked together diligently over the last few months to really come up with a strategy that's going to really help not only Southern Nevadans but also Northern Nevadans. And one of the things that we have specifically talked about is we feel that in order to have a healthy Northern Nevada power system, the best thing is probably to cut our losses with Nevada Power in the south and have the water district in Nevada take over Southern Nevada power needs.
Okay, we're out of time, unfortunately. I want to thank both my guests for being here with us today. We did invite Jonathan Hansen to join us, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it. We'll be back after this.
Bobby Page's Cleaners, quality and service with a smile. We're always close and convenient. Visit Bobby Page's Cleaners in the Moana West Shopping Center on Lakeside Drive.
When your home just isn't big enough, go to Growing World RV and Mini Storage, the best place to store your extra stuff and the best storage prices in town. Call Growing World today at 323-1515.
Mom's recipe for life is to enjoy it to the fullest. That's why she told me about Northern Nevada's Diagnostic Breast Care Center. From how to watch for breast cancer to how to stay fit and reduce health risks, they answered all of my questions. Thanks to Mom's advice, I'm enjoying life on my terms. So about the only question I still have is, I was getting stuck with the dishes.
Northern Nevada Medical Center, quality health care, close to home.
If you've lived in Reno for a while, then you know the best values in furniture for your home are found at Rick's Furniture Warehouse, where you always find everyday low prices. If you're new to Reno, then you owe it to yourself to come by Rick's to find the best furniture values. Rick's giant warehouse is stocked with a huge selection of living room, dining room, and bedroom furniture and accessories. If you haven't been to Rick's lately, stop by. There's new furniture arriving every week. In Reno, there's only one place with everyday low prices. That's Rick's Furniture Warehouse at the corner of Moana and Kitsky Lane.
Planning to sell your home or condo this year? You're probably wondering how much it's worth. You can find out free on the web at housevalues.com. That's housevalues.com.
Reno Business Executives. CEO IQ presents Jack Trout, consultant to Fortune 500 companies and best-selling author on marketing, October 18th at the Atlantis Resort Casino. Trout uses positioning to make companies more competitive. If he can boost the bottom line performance of Fortune 500 companies, he can do the same for your company on October 18th. And you can win a library of his autographed bestsellers at the luncheon October 18th at the Atlantis Resort Casino. Purchase your tickets today. Call 828-3939.
Welcome back. We're here with our pundit panel. Dick Gammick speaking for conservatives, Chris Wicker speaking for the Democrats, Greg Ferraro for the Republicans, and Ed Pearce and I are, of course, neutral.
Kind of sitting there. That's not what Ed said.
Okay, let's talk about the Attorney General's race. I mean, you know, basically these ads all have to do with campaign contributions, very little issues. What's happening
Well,
here?
you know, I think what I saw with the ads is that a negative ad is not one that tells the truth. And you look at the ads being run by John Hunt's campaign, and I think they're telling the truth. You look at the ad being run by Sandoval's campaign, they flash up their fraud and so forth. That's the misrepresentation that makes a negative ad.
Chris
that kind
has
of
to say
misrepresentation.
something about the Hunt campaign, so I guess that's the best he's going to do. I mean, I find it a little ironic that John says that before somebody makes a contribution, they're supposed to get to know both candidates, and yet his biggest contributor hasn't ever met Brian Sandoval. You know, in a case like this, I think you've really got to stack up experience. I think both candidates want to do the job, they're campaigning in earnest, but that one candidate has the leadership and the experience and is better prepared for the job, and I think that's Sandoval.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned experience because I've been wanting to talk about that. The Attorney General is going to be the head of this state's largest law firm. And Brian Sandoval, he's a heck of a nice guy and a lot of people like him, but he does not have nearly the legal experience that John Hunt has to run the state's largest law firm.
I don't know what you base that on, Chris. Tell me, give me some
Brian
specifics.
Sandoval has not handled a major case except perhaps on behalf of the utility shareholders. They've talked about it in
major
debates.
cases divorce cases?
You know,
Because that's predominantly John's practice.
John Hunt has given cases.
I'm not aware. What's John Hunt's background in a large law firm?
He's running a large law firm, and
How big?
I don't know, you have to
know.
ask John Hunt, but a lot more than Brian Sandoval has ever had. And John Hunt has 20 years of litigation experience. Brian Sandoval
The Attorney General doesn't
not.
litigate. I hate to break that to you, but they don't litigate.
The
I've been
Attorney
very
General
close to the
runs
Attorney
the
General for a lot of
strategy
years.
the Attorney General is going to run the strategy for the state's largest law firm. He better know something
This
about
takes
litigation.
somebody that knows
I
the system.
think Dick and Chris disagree.
Well, I think we're real close. I think
And more so than our two candidates did here, sitting there.
You know, I think it's unusual in the campaign spots that you saw on the show previously that in the Hunt campaigns they never show John, or you never hear John's voice, and I think that's what's led the Sandoval campaign to try to introduce John Hunt. Clearly, they've done it from their own perspective about issues that they think need to be raised. But you know, why isn't John on his own spots is a question for me.
What role is Senator Reid playing in all this?
Well, I think Senator Reid is playing a big role. You know, he's the top Democrat in the state, and I think Senator Reid has been very helpful in convincing people to run. Now, Brian Sandoval is working to be a career politician. John Hunt is coming out of a legal practice to serve the state and run the state's largest law firm, and I think Reid had a big hand in convincing John Hunt to run.
What's wrong with a career politician? Isn't Senator Reid one?
Yes, there's nothing wrong with a career politician, but I think you have to look at what that person's going to do. I think Brian is probably being groomed to take a run at the governor's race. John Hunt is running for the Attorney General's office, and because he doesn't have that long-time political ambition, I think he's going to be with the Attorney General's office.
I said it
problem
before.
with somebody breaking into the system going after the Attorney General's job, because that is a professional position. It is the top law enforcement person in the state, and they represent this state all over the United States. They do a lot of stuff, and that person should know the system well and should be able to function in that capacity well, and I'm not so sure John Hunt's got the experience. That's what I want to see on these ads. I don't like negative campaigning. I've made that real clear, but I want to see what are the qualifications of the two people to run. I know Brian Sandoval and his qualifications because I've worked with him for years. John Hunt came from out of the blue somewhere, and I don't know anything about him. I know anything about his
just because you
qualifications.
don't know him doesn't mean that he's not qualified. I hate to break that to you, Dick.
But Chris, there really wasn't an ad up here that sort of introduced John Hunt to the people up here.
Well, you know, I have seen ads introducing John Hunt, but maybe I go to Las Vegas a lot, maybe I saw him there. Yeah. I don't know if they're running here, but I think it's very important for people to know that the utility shareholders have been one of Sandoval's major clients, and when he argues for rate increases in court, isn't it a little hard for him to reverse course and argue for rate decreases for the Attorney General's
Wait, now
office?
let me ask something. My father was an attorney. He didn't always agree with his clients. You're an attorney. Mm-hmm. Just because you represent a client well, does that mean you believe everything that client
No, I
believes?
mean, look at Oscar Goodman, you know, you know, he represented Tony Spilotro, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And just because you represent a client doesn't mean you believe what that client says. But you take it a step further, and Brian Sandoval has taken numerous contributions from the utility shareholders. That's a step further than just representing a client.
Let me go back and try to answer your question about Senator Reid. He's the #1 Democrat in the state. It's his job to work with his team and try to elect his Democrats. I don't think you can find any fault with Senator Reid's role in this campaign. I will say, however, though, with 4 weeks to go, today, 4 weeks from now is Election Day, I think the Hunt campaign is peaking. I don't know that they have a lot of new messages, and I think Sandoval campaign will continue to present new reasons why to elect him.
Well, it's too early for predictions.
Well, actually, we have just enough time here for a predict. Anybody have a prediction? Because we're running out of time.
Yes, I have a prediction. This time it's a reverse prediction. I never would have predicted that the Reno Gazette-Journal would have endorsed Maurice Washington with all his ethical baggage, criminal complaints. I was shocked that they endorsed Maurice Washington solely for the reason that he's from the North and perhaps might keep power in the North. But with all of his baggage, I was shocked.
You weren't alone.
Let's keep it in perspective. I'm going to predict that Brian Sandoval will be the next Attorney General in this state.
All right, and I'll say that I need to amend my earlier prediction about turnout. I said turnout might be as high as 60%. I think we're probably looking around 52, 53%.
Actually, you started at 65%.
I said up to
it
65, maybe in Las Vegas, but statewide, probably somewhere in the low 50s.
Ed, do you have any predictions you want to make?
I would predict that I think this campaign is going to remain nasty on television, and these two guys, when you get both of them together, they get along quite well.
Okay. I want to thank all our pundit panel for being here this morning. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to tell you who's coming on tomorrow, and you'll be surprised.